Hi there, friends. Alright, so I'm going to do something that I normally don't do. I'm going to jump in here with a little bit of voiceover, and I'm going to change a little bit about something that I did on day 9. And I normally don't do this. First off, I normally don't do this because I don't have a lot of time to spend going back and recreating things. However, sometimes you do something on the next day and it sticks with you and it just sort of won't go away. And so I had this happen, and when I finished day 10 and went to photograph day 10, I realized that there was some things going on day 9 that now I'm not entirely happy with. And so this is day 10, and okay, first off, day 10 looks fantastic the way it is. This is fine. It would be totally okay to leave it just like this and nothing more. You know, I am all for create what you create and move on and let it be, let it be what it is, perfect or imperfect. Let it be what it is. But I photographed this and I realized that the back of, or the front of this vellum is now lost. And it's sort of, well, I know that a lot of people struggle with using transparencies and using vellums because of this fact. Because when you work on the front side, what do you do with the back side? And what happens on the back side? And I can tell you that if you want a fantastic example of how to do it perfectly matching, then Ali Edwards' blog post yesterday was fantastic. I'll link that so that you can go see what she did. 3 circles and then 2 smaller transparency circles on a transparency, and she did the same on the front and on the back. And her layout is fabulous. And I'll tell you that before I started creating day 10, I sat for a long time with circles and tried to see, what can I do with my circles, and especially because these chair coasters are circles, and isn't that just fantastic? I love these. And so I thought for a long time, what can I do with circles on this transparency? And I wasn't feeling it yesterday. For whatever reason, her layout looks fantastic, and it's highly possible that I could go back tomorrow and have a different transparency and different circles and feel really good about what I was creating. But for whatever reason, that didn't work for me for this transparency, and it probably was because I was already committed to what's on here. But now when I turn back, this sort of gets lost, and it would be absolutely okay just to leave it like this. In fact, if I didn't have a few extra hours of time today, I probably would just leave it like that. If I had days like the rest of the week have been today, I probably would leave it and move forward. But I do have a little bit of extra time, and I'm just sitting here sort of thinking about the album as a whole. I'm sort of thinking about what has been my design concept going into this album, and what am I trying to carry through the album. And I have to tell you that that's really hard for me to articulate, because a lot of what I do design-wise is just what I do without really even thinking about it. So to be able to try to explain my decisions is kind of a challenge for me. But I know that when I look at this, I'm not completely happy with it. And to be honest, if I come back next week or next year, I don't know that I'm going to be any happier. And so I'm going to do something that I normally don't do, and that is I'm going to go back to this and look at this again and say, what can I do? What can I do to make this something that I'm happy about, but something that retains my design concept for this album? And there are actually two design elements, I guess, that I use. One is the entire album cover. If you remember, or if you saw my album cover process video, the entire thing is gessoed. And I have a long, long, long love relationship with gesso. I love it. I love how you can sort of make it as transparent as you want it, or sort of almost see-through, and the qualities that the depth that it gives your papers is pretty amazing. And the other element, I guess, are these transparent elements. And this is one of the things I love about December Daily is I hoard these vellums and these transparencies. I collect them all throughout the year. And specifically knowing that in December I'm going to want to use those transparencies and those vellums in my December Daily album. That is something that I do every year, and I love it. And this year has been a little bit different because in the past I've always done a transparent divider in between the days, and so I didn't do that this year, trying to maintain some of the bulk. But this page happened to turn out that way, and so here we are. So when I was thinking about what can I do, I'm sort of stuck here. What can I do with this page? What do I need to do to make it be something that I feel a little bit better about, and that I'm not laying awake at night wondering about? I try not to do that with my layouts, but sometimes that just happens. So here we go. And so thinking about these two elements in this book, I have to combine them. Because I have not, since I created this album, I have not used the gesso again in this album. It just hasn't, the opportunity just hasn't presented itself to me, and that's okay too. If I never did any other gesso in this album, that would be fine. However, this is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to use a layer of gesso over this. It's consistent with the album, and it will still maintain some of that transparency that's inherent in this piece. And also, I painted the strip across the bottom here. It's just the little piece that tells you what the brand is. This is a transparency from Pretty Little Studio, and her transparencies are 8x8, and this sheet size is really more 8.5. And so I wanted to keep that for the length, and that's why I had painted over that when I did that layout. And so to gesso the whole thing is consistent with what I've already started with, and will probably make sense in the end, I'm hoping. Now, one thing I had to sit here and think about is the fact that I have gold letters here, and in case you haven't picked up on what I think I'm going to do here, is I'm going to gesso this whole thing white, just on this side. I'm not going to mess with this side. And yes, I think I'm going to cover these gold letters, and I had to think about, okay, why did I put these words down here? Did I put this down for the gold, or did I put this down for the words? And I really put this down for the words. Not necessarily for the gold. And so that makes me okay with letting go of the gold and see what they look like white. And I will tell you that the reason I chose these words is because of what happened at this event. This was a luncheon and we did a little bit of shopping. But this was a special event with two very special people who took the time to encourage and empower each other, and then now we are going and being awesome. And so it's important to me to keep these words, but it's not important to me to keep the gold. So there we go. With all that being said, here's how you know what I'm getting ready to do, why I'm getting ready to do what I'm getting ready to do, and how this is sort of just one of those unusual things that I've never done before in the middle of December Daily, which is go back and change something and make something look different. But what the heck? This is a risk. It would be perfectly okay to leave this just like this. And then it might not be okay to leave it just like this, because I know next week I would still be bothered by it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to speed up the video and go ahead and paint this, and we'll see how it turns out. And then I will come back after that's done and we'll see what it turned out looking like. Okay. Okay, so what do we think of this so far? I think that I really like it. I think that it needs a second coat, maybe just around the edges, just to sort of let there be some more gradation or more differences in the shades. And it's kind of fascinating because I'm inspired by some of the paintings we saw yesterday at the Reynolda house. The paintings that we saw were Monet inspired, and so of course Impressionist, and there were a couple that were wintry scenes that were just like this. Well, not really. I'm not an artist here, but what impressed me with some of the more wintry scenes yesterday was how they created different shades of white and how they created visual interest in paintings that were primarily white. And some of that, of course, in Impressionist painting is done by layering, so that the light catches the shadows. And that's actually, what you see in gesso, because it has a little bit of texture to it that's a contrast to the transparency. And so that's actually what you're seeing right here, where you see the brush strokes. You're catching the light reflect from those little grooves and surfaces. So I'm probably going to just go around sort of the edge, sort of like a vignette on this. I may touch up the letters just a little bit because I want to make sure that all the gold is covered and that you know that they're white now, not white with like little strokes of gold in there. So let's see how that turns out, and I'll be back. Alright, so we did all that, and here's what I came up with. And so just a few comments about this. It actually looks really good, and I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. And this is, I wanted to record this because it's a great example of, you know, how long it took me to talk myself into trying this and what happened when I took that risk. And you know, if this had come out really awful and I didn't like it, okay, well then it would be the time to pitch it. But I do like how this turned out. And just a couple of quick notes before I put it in the album, and then we'll move on to day 11. But one is that I really like that this is just all white, and this is a place, this will become a place in the album where your eye can just rest. Because my pages tend to be busy and tend to have a lot going on. There's a lot to read, there's a lot to see, there's a lot of embellishments. There's just, because that's what I like. But I am trying in my projects and in my memory keeping to sort of create these quieter spaces where your eye can rest and you can just breathe a sigh of relief for just a moment, that you don't have to think really hard when you're looking at this. But there's still visual interest. There's all these brush strokes and the little polka dots and just the words. And you know, there was an interesting part of our conversation that Katie and I had while we were having lunch, and it was just because we're both in this period in our life where we feel like really good things are getting ready to happen and are happening. You know, and we've both had to let some things go to make that happen, and we've had to take risks to let that, to make the space for these really great things to happen. And isn't that how life is? And we talked about how you know, there's this sort of intake of breath, like, okay, and now there's no turning back, and it's time to move forward, and this feels like that. This is just that intake of air, and then let's see what happens when we go and are awesome. So anyway, just a little philosophy, a little theology behind this page, which is kind of cool. And then I really like how when I was painting this, you know, some of the paint, you know, got underneath and bled around these edges. And man, I really like that. That to me is something unexpected. I've got some adhesive right there on my worktop. I'm sorry, that's really gross. But anyway, that is something that is unexpected, and you know, any other day I might have been like, oh my god, I gotta get that off. But I left it there for two reasons. One, it ties the two pages together. One of the reasons why I wanted to paint this was because day 9 and day 10 needed some separation. They needed some visual separation. And so we've got that. We've got that visual separation. Good on that. But they still need a link. And so these little edges, these little white painted edges, just kind of create a subtle link to the previous page, because they are linked. The transparency will always link. If you're dividing that between days, it will always link those 2 days. And that's a great way to approach if you're doing, if you're documenting like a trip, a weekend trip that you made, and you want that to be a segment in your December daily or in your album that you're working on, transparencies are a great way to link those days visually and keep a consistent feel in that portion of the album. These 2 days, honestly, what's linked in these 2 days is what's not even written on the page. It's me feeding my soul and feeding my own self by spending time with people that I really admire and care about and love. And, that's something that I don't even have to write down. It just is. But they were 2 different events with 2 different people in 2 different days. So some separation was needed. But I think that this does a great job of linking the 2 days together in sort of an unexpected and kind of artistic way, because it does serve to frame this, and it's another white element, because there is a lot of white in this layout. There's now the white background that's no longer completely transparent, and there's the white in the door and the frame and the white of the building and the white of the tree and the white of this little bit of lettering here. And so that's a good thing. It's another element of white that, again, helps your eye to find a place to rest. And in this case, it provides some visual interest. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the album, and then we'll move along to day 11. And I hope that you've learned something, or that you've gotten something out of this. It's been fun kind of talking to you about these decision processes and sort of what I go through sometimes to make decisions when unexpected things come up. And that will happen. That will inevitably happen in the process of December Daily. And so here's a look. Here's a look at day 9. And then here's day 10. Completed. So I'm really happy that you decided to follow along and that you decided to take a listen to what I had going on for these 2 days. And thanks for following on my blog at larkindesign.squarespace.com. And if you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, that would be really awesome. And so now it's time to go, do, and create. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.